David Reynolds was the kind of man everyone trusted, respected dentist, devoted husband, and proud father to 3-year-old Emily. But just weeks after her tragic death in a sweltering hot car, David was spotted sipping cocktails on a Hawaiian beach. What seemed like a heartbreaking accident quickly twisted into a chilling mystery. Had David truly forgotten his daughter? Or had he planned it all along? In the quiet neighborhood of Greenville, South Carolina, life moved slowly. Neighbors waved from front porches, children rode bikes until sunset, and every weekend brought a backyard barbecue or a visit to the local church. Among the families living in this peaceful community, the Reynolds family stood out as a picture of success. David Reynolds, 38, was a well-known dentist in the area. His clinic sat at the corner of Main and Willow Street, where he had served the community for over a decade. His reputation was solid, polite, professional, and seemingly kind. People trusted him. Patients brought him baked goods and Christmas cards. He was the kind of man no one questioned. At home, David's life appeared just as flawless. His wife, Melissa, often posted cheerful photos online, family hikes, cozy movie nights, and their daughter Emily's giggling tea parties. Emily, only 3 years old, was the heart of the family. With curly brown hair and big eyes that seemed to sparkle, she charmed everyone who met her. Whether at the church nursery or on playdates at the park, Emily was described as sweet, well-behaved, and curious. To outsiders, the Reynolds family had everything: a beautiful home, stable income, a happy child, and what looked like a strong marriage. But not everything was as it seemed. Behind the closed doors of their suburban home, things were beginning to shift. Melissa had recently confided in a friend that David wasn't the same man she married. He came home later and later, often claiming to be working overtime at the clinic. He had started snapping at Emily over small things like spilled juice or her refusal to go to bed. Nothing major, just enough to leave Melissa feeling unsettled. David, too, was changing in subtle but troubling ways. He no longer smiled in family photos. He spent more time on his phone, often locking the screen when Melissa walked by. He had stopped joining her and Emily at the park or on weekend outings. Sometimes he would disappear into his home office for hours, with the door closed and music playing just loud enough to drown out the sound of the world outside. Despite the signs, Melissa brushed away her concerns. She told herself that all marriages had rough patches. Maybe David was just stressed from work. After all, running a dental clinic wasn't easy, and taking care of a toddler came with its own share of exhaustion. She didn't want to overreact. She didn't want to believe that something was truly wrong. And so life continued in the Reynolds household, with smiles for the neighbors and polite small talk at church. No one suspected that beneath the surface, the bonds of the Reynolds family were beginning to fray. No one imagined that in just a few weeks, the family that once symbolized suburban perfection would be shattered by tragedy. A tragedy so shocking, it would make headlines across the country and leave a town forever changed. The morning of June 14, 2023, began like any other. The sky was cloudless, and the summer sun was already blazing by 8 a.m. David Reynolds left the house just after breakfast, carrying his briefcase in one hand and Emily's tiny backpack in the other. He told Melissa he was dropping their daughter off at daycare on his way to work. There was nothing unusual in his tone, nothing alarming in his behavior. It was just another Wednesday, or so it seemed. What happened next remains a point of horror and disbelief. David pulled into the parking lot of his dental clinic just before 8:30 a.m. Instead of continuing on to Emily's daycare, which was only 10 minutes away, he parked the car, turned off the engine, and walked into his office. The vehicle sat in the sun, locked, with Emily still strapped in her car seat. Temperatures that day soared to nearly 100 degrees. Inside the car, it grew hotter with every passing minute. Within half an hour, the temperature had surpassed 120 degrees. By noon, it was over 140. The interior of the car became a furnace, and the little girl inside stood no chance. David went about his workday as if nothing were wrong. He saw patients, made phone calls, and even stepped out for lunch. Witnesses later said he appeared calm, maybe even unusually cheerful. He never mentioned his daughter. He never stepped outside to check the car. Hours passed, and Emily remained locked inside. It wasn't until just after 4 p.m. that a concerned passerby noticed something odd. The car, a silver SUV, had been parked in the same spot all day. There was a child's toy on the back seat and what appeared to be a small figure slumped in a car seat. The bystander called 911. When paramedics arrived and smashed the window open, the heat hit them like a wall. Emily was unresponsive. Her skin was flushed, her body limp. She had been dead for hours. David was called to the scene, and his reaction raised immediate concerns. He seemed confused, almost detached. He told officers he had completely forgotten to drop Emily off at daycare. He said he had been under pressure, overwhelmed by work. The officers noted his story, but also noticed the lack of visible grief. There were no tears, no shaking hands, just a man with a blank expression and an unbelievable explanation. News of the incident spread quickly. Headlines labeled it a tragic accident, a distracted father making the worst mistake imaginable. But behind the scenes, investigators were already raising questions. How does a man go an entire day without thinking once of his child? Why had he stopped for coffee after arriving at work? And how could he have sat just yards away from the car, hour after hour, without ever noticing what was inside? Something didn't add up. What at first seemed like a terrible lapse in memory was starting to look more like something else, something far more deliberate. In the days following Emily's death, what initially appeared to be a heartbreaking accident quickly began to unravel under the weight of scrutiny. The Greenville Police Department, working closely with child welfare officials and the district attorney's office, launched a full-scale investigation. While the media and local community mourned the loss of the innocent child, detectives were piecing together a puzzle that didn't seem to fit David Reynolds' version of events. The first red flag came from surveillance footage obtained from a cafe just around the corner from David's clinic. Security cameras captured him walking in around 8:45 a.m., just 15 minutes after he had parked his car. He ordered a large iced coffee and sat down with his laptop, appearing relaxed and unhurried. At no point did he appear distracted or in distress. After about 30 minutes, he returned to the parking lot briefly, stood near the car for a few minutes, and then went back into his office. This detail disturbed investigators. He had approached the car and still failed to notice Emily was inside. It defied logic. Next came the discovery of David's internet search history. On June 12, just 2 days before Emily's death, David had used his personal phone to search, "How long does it take a child to die in a hot car?" He also browsed multiple news articles and medical websites detailing the effects of heat stroke on children. These searches were done late at night, long after Melissa and Emily had gone to bed. For detectives, this painted a chilling picture. David hadn't forgotten Emily in the car. He had researched what would happen to her. The most damning piece of early evidence came from a financial audit of the Reynolds family. Investigators discovered that just 3 months prior, David had quietly taken out a $500,000 life insurance policy on Emily. He listed himself as the sole beneficiary. The policy had no mention of Melissa, and when questioned later, she would claim she had no knowledge of it. The timing of the policy, paired with the search history, gave investigators a theory too disturbing to ignore. David had planned Emily's death. Neighbors were shocked. Patients at his dental clinic stopped showing up. The image of the responsible, kind family man began to crumble. People who once praised his generosity now recalled cold stares and strange behavior. A few admitted they had seen David grow distant from Emily, often brushing her off in public or ignoring her entirely. With the new evidence in hand, authorities filed formal charges against David Reynolds, second-degree murder and felony child neglect. He was arrested at his home on June 21, exactly 1 week after Emily's death. Wearing a button-down shirt and slacks, David was calm as he was led away in handcuffs. The arrest sent shockwaves through Greenville. Emily's death was no longer seen as an accident but a calculated crime. A child hadn't been forgotten, she had been discarded. And the man responsible wasn't a careless father, but someone who had plotted the unthinkable. David Reynolds spent just 4 nights in jail before his high-profile attorney secured his release on a $750,000 bond. The court ordered him to surrender his passport and remain within South Carolina, but within days, those conditions would come under question. On June 27, a paparazzi photo surfaced that sent the media and public into a frenzy. David standing barefoot on a white sand beach in Hawaii, holding a drink with a paper umbrella. He was smiling. The photo went viral. How could a man facing murder charges for his own daughter's death be vacationing in paradise? Outrage poured in from every direction. Talk shows debated the ethics of the justice system. True crime forums exploded with theories. Protesters even appeared outside the courthouse, holding signs that read "Justice for Emily" and "No Paradise for a Killer." For Melissa Reynolds, who was still attending grief counseling and sleeping beside her daughter's empty bed, it was a knife to the heart. Legal experts quickly clarified that David had not technically broken the law. The court had failed to restrict out-of-state travel in the initial bond agreement, a devastating oversight. His lawyer claimed the trip was pre-planned and paid for months in advance. He said David needed space to mentally heal from the trauma. He described the vacation as a form of therapy, not pleasure. But the explanation did little to calm public anger. The court was caught off guard. The judge who approved the bond issued an emergency hearing to revisit the terms. But by the time officials scrambled to amend the travel restrictions, David had posted a series of private Instagram stories showing himself hiking volcano trails, swimming with sea turtles, and dining at a luxury resort. He even shared a snapshot of a sunset captioned, "Grateful for peace." The audacity shocked even seasoned prosecutors. Melissa responded by filing for divorce that same week. Her statement, delivered through her attorney, accused David of being void of remorse and morally bankrupt. She revealed she hadn't spoken to him since the night of Emily's death and claimed he had never once reached out to express sorrow. The woman who once defended her husband in front of reporters was now calling him a monster. Pressure mounted on the prosecution. They accelerated their case, seeking more concrete evidence that could guarantee a conviction. Behind the scenes, they were also working to ensure David could not flee the country. His behavior in Hawaii had raised a red flag. He was unpredictable and possibly dangerous. Public trust in the legal system was beginning to erode. Commentators warned that David's money and influence could help him escape real punishment. The phrase "vacationing murderer" became a viral hashtag. Meanwhile, in Hawaii, David continued to post vague philosophical quotes about starting over and letting go of the past. But David Reynolds didn't he know that his past was about to catch up to him in a way he never expected, because someone who knew him well had come forward, and they weren't staying silent. Just as David Reynolds was settling into his island escape, confident that his money and carefully crafted image would protect him, a new and unexpected voice emerged, one that would shatter his illusion of control. A former employee from his dental practice, a soft-spoken woman named Amanda Lowell, walked into the Greenville Police Department carrying a sealed envelope. She had worked closely with David for nearly 5 years and had access to his private office, filing system, and administrative notes. What she revealed changed the entire direction of the case. Amanda explained that shortly after Emily's death, she had been asked by a temporary office manager to clean out David's desk. While going through a drawer, she found a slim folder marked simply with the word "personal." Inside were handwritten journal entries, a flash drive, and a letter that looked like a draft of something never sent. What she read deeply disturbed her, and for days she debated what to do. But when she saw David smiling in beach photos, everything changed. Her conscience wouldn't allow her to stay quiet. The journal entries detailed David's growing resentment toward his life, toward Melissa, his career, and most hauntingly, his own daughter. One entry read, "Every day feels like a trap. I didn't sign up for this. There's no way out unless something gives." Another entry described a scenario disturbingly similar to what had happened. "Hot days are dangerous. It wouldn't take long, and no one would suspect it wasn't a mistake." The flash drive contained a document with a budget outlining his post-divorce life plans to move, invest the insurance payout, and start a new dental brand under a different name. The unsent letter was perhaps the most chilling, a confession. It described feeling suffocated by fatherhood and claimed that Emily was too much of a weight to carry. He never admitted murder directly, but the implications were undeniable. With this new evidence, prosecutors moved quickly. A warrant was issued for David's rearrest, and federal marshals coordinated with authorities in Hawaii. David was located at the Honolulu International Airport with a one-way ticket to Thailand. He was stopped just minutes before boarding. His passport had been flagged, but he didn't think they'd act fast enough. He was wrong. Back in South Carolina, David was held without bail. This time, there would be no legal loopholes, no sunny beaches, and no more excuses. In court, the evidence was overwhelming. The journal entries, search history, insurance documents, and the testimony from Amanda formed a web that was impossible to untangle. During the trial, David showed little emotion. He declined to speak, never took the stand, and stared blankly as prosecutors described in detail the suffering of his daughter and the cruelty of his choices. The jury deliberated for less than 5 hours. He was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Emily Reynolds was laid to rest beneath a white stone carved with butterflies. Her mother visits every week, leaving small flowers and toys. Greenville still mourns her, still struggles to understand how someone meant to protect a child could so easily destroy her. The smiling man on the beach had finally been unmasked, and justice had the final word.